All right, it's 6:48 right now, and as we promised, we're going to hold the congressman here, Steve Austria, accountable. I'll tell you, you came and here you are in the hot seat on the morning that all we're hearing about is apparent failure by the super committee to cut the budget, cut more than $1 trillion. And now we fear that some of those automatic cuts will go into place, of course, defense spending among them. Please tell us what you have heard up here to the last minute.
I have had an opportunity to talk to some of our members that are on the super committee as late as last Friday. And unfortunately, it's disappointing that it appears as though the super committee is still far apart, and they have to come up with a solution really by the end of today, on Monday. They have to report to Congress, give Congress an opportunity to look at that report by Wednesday, November 23rd. And their job is to come up with $1.2 trillion worth of cuts, which seems like a lot on the surface, but if you put it in perspective, the stimulus plan, for example, that was nearly $1 trillion of spending in 1 year. We're talking about $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years. The health care reform bill, another $1 trillion plan. So unfortunately, this committee is stuck on taxes, on the fundamental differences on whether to raise taxes during a difficult economy or not, and who to raise them on. And the other area being the entitlements, Social Security, Medicare. How do we fix that? And do we address that with this committee? Those seem to be the items that the super committee can't find agreement on, unfortunately.
Well, what about the balanced budget amendment that went down to defeat?
Well, last week was a good example of getting our fiscal house in order in Washington. I strongly believe in order to get our fiscal house in order to change the way we're doing business with all the borrowing and spending, we've got to balance our budget. You know, I was a co-sponsor of Cut, Cap, and Balance, which I think that's the plan that we need to get our fiscal house in order. Last week we had a vote on a balanced budget amendment for Washington, and unfortunately we couldn't get 2/3 of the members to vote and pass that, and it failed. And I hope we can bring that up again and convince enough members that this is important enough to get our fiscal house in order. But this super committee this week is critical, I think, because if they don't come up with the $1.2 trillion worth of cuts, what that means is that sequestration could kick in. And what that means to your viewers is that we're talking about $500 billion worth of cuts across the board, and a lot of that will impact directly defense, which is not good for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in our region.
Well, none of this, Congressman, bodes well for Congress. I mean, in the private sector, you can't come up with a balanced budget. You're out of a job. Right. Bottom line, it doesn't look good for all members of Congress, including yourself, really. And
I think you're absolutely right. We have 12 members on the commission, 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats who can't come up with an agreement.
For 2 months.
For 2 months. You look at Washington for the last year with a Republican House and Republican or Democrat Senate, with the gridlock that's in Washington, we can't agree. So, to expect 12 members from each side of the aisle to come up with an agreement, it seems like it's a reasonable thing, but unfortunately in Washington, it's not happening, and you wonder why the confidence in Congress right now and the president is so low.
Quickly, sir, you're looking for transparency in the shuttle.
Absolutely.
Debacle.
Obviously, our region, and I was very upset the fact that we did not land a shuttle here at the National Museum of the United States Air Force. I thought we should have. And in hindsight, when we've done congressional inquiries, we found that we scored as high as 2 other sites that actually got shuttles. And now we're finding in New York that the site that they were supposed to put the shuttle on, they can't do that, and they want to change to a different site. I had offered an amendment in the Appropriations Committee that would hold NASA accountable for transporting and housing the shuttles. And I believe that if you can't live up to what you said you could do, then that should be put back on the table, and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in our region and the National Museum of the United States Air Force should be able to recompete for that and have an opportunity to have one of the shuttles here in our area. We have contacted the administrator. I hope to talk to Administrator Bolton in the near future. I've talked to him multiple times and trying to convince him that we have the best site that's ready to go right now to house one of the shuttles, and it would do tremendous justice to the Midwest to have a museum with free admission, free parking, that most of the country can get to in one day.
Anything we can do to keep the heat on?
Well, we're just going to keep the awareness out there and keep pushing hard in Congress in an effort to try to convince NASA and educate NASA about the facility that we have here.
Well, and there's still the We the People petition, so it's not over yet, right? Is that what you're saying this morning?
And I thank our community. That shows the strength of our community with the We the People petition, that the people in this region understand what we have here with aviation, the history of aviation.
All right, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And you're headed to the STEM Center, so we'll hear more on that today. All right.
Congressman Austria, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.